I love how varied it is. I love how no day is the same, no week is the same, no test is the same. You get to sort of flex your analytical, quantitative, statistical muscles as much as you get to use your design brain and sort of UX side of thinking. It really just ticks a lot of boxes. CRO is not just the testing side of things. It encompasses a lot of the research and the understanding of your customers, as important, if not more important, to lay a good foundation for your tests and experiments that you're going to be run. So a lot of times, your primary metric in a test is a quantity-based metric. It's click-through rate, add to carts, interactions with a function or a feature. It's really helpful and I think really, really valuable to think of the comparable and measure the comparable quality metric for that quantity. So your progression to PDPs, your engagement post-search. But even if you don't see a straight green of, yes, this is an outright winner, we will implement this onto the website, the learnings involved in that analysis are equally as valuable in how they can then be applied after that test. Customers are becoming more and more brand agnostic in the way that they shop. That a level of brand loyalty that we've seen historically is sort of moving away a little bit. So CRO really can become very powerful to a business, using it to understand why people shop with you, exactly sort of the experiences that people are looking for and the experiences that might hinder someone. Sometimes in those situations where you have something that doesn't work, this is where I think CRO can be really powerful in that it makes you question your own assumptions. And like what you might have gone into a test with a hypothesis that's like, there's no way it can fail, this is much better, whatever it might be, and it doesn't, well then, like, you have learned something.
Welcome to another episode of the CRO Wizards series by VWO podcast. In this series, we speak to top CRO leaders in e-commerce, media, subscription, retail, banking, and other industries about CRO strategies and the positive impact they can have on your business. Before we speak to our special guest for this episode, here's a quick summary of who we are and what we do. VWO is a leading experience optimization platform. Using our latest product, VWO Insights, you can analyze user journeys and identify conversion roadblocks on your website and mobile app. So without any further delay, let's jump right into the conversation.
Today, we are delighted to welcome Emma Orton, a leading CRO specialist at Super Retail Group. Super Retail Group is a powerhouse in the retail world, proudly managing 4 iconic brands: Supercheap Auto, Rebel, PCF, and Macpac. As one of the largest retailers in Australia and New Zealand, Super Retail Group is at the forefront of innovation in retail industry. Join us as Emma shares her expertise and insights into the world of conversion rate optimization and how she drives success for such a prominent retail group. Hello, Emma. Welcome to CRO Wizards series by VWO podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So tell us if there's something interesting you're working on this week or you're planned for next week.
So at the moment, we're working on sort of planning out the rest of our financial year and putting in some exciting things in the future, just figuring out what we want to be doing.
All right. So growing up, do you know that you wanted to be in this field, or was there something else that you had planned or dreamt of like doing?
No, not at all. I didn't even really know that this was a job for a long time. So no, I actually at one point wanted to be a vet, and then that quickly dissipated. I always kind of wanted to do things with people. I was interested in law or linguistics or psychology. So this sort of feels like the digital application of that. But no, I didn't even know this was a possibility until, a long time.
It's interconnected, like when you plan of psychology and like this also comes through that. But yes, like you mentioned, it's in digital space.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you love most about like CRO industry?
I love how varied it is. I love how no day is the same, no week is the same, no test is the same. You get to sort of flex your analytical, quantitative, statistical muscles as much as you get to use your design brain and sort of UX side of thinking, really delving into, people and their psychology and how they make decisions. So it really just ticks a lot of boxes for me. I love the variety.
So it's like you fly with multiple wings into the
Yeah.
digital world.
Yeah, what's going to be required of me today?
Yes. So now we'll jump to understand like how important is it to incorporate the voice of customers into experimentation strategy, and would love to learn that how do you do about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really important. We have it as a sort of staple part of our ongoing research. So CRO is not just the testing side of things. It encompasses a lot of the research, and the understanding of your customer is as important, if not more important, to lay a good foundation for your tests and experiments that you're going to be run. You need to be able to research and understand, to identify the issues, so that you're running an experimentation program which is data driven and issue driven. But you also need to understand your customers. What do they want? Where are their specific pain points? And a voice of customer insight, whatever medium that may be, whether it's survey or feedback tools, product reviews, all factor in to making one big, sort of really holistic, detailed understanding of what's going on. So in addition to the research phase being really important to make it insight driven for your tests, it's really important to understand your customers. We have a sort of always on voice of customer survey at all times. We've got at least a survey going, insights from focus groups, and even blending of the offsite in-store kind of data, and understanding how people are using our web chat functions, and sort of the things that they come to the contact center with are all fantastic, really rich resources. Layering that kind of on the ground sort of verbatim feedback with what you know about your website performance gives a really rich tapestry to understand what's going on.
And that's interesting thing that you mentioned, that you also consider offline data, like you mentioned the store data, in order to understand that how like offline sale is happening versus how people perceive the same set of, like I would say, bouquet of offering into website space. So that's also a like nice blend of data that you bring in while analyzing the customers' insights as well.
Yeah, I think we're fortunate with such a big business that we're not short of customer insights. So harnessing them, knowing where they are, using them to layer on top of sort of the quantitative side of things, especially, is great.
Yes. So tell us, like experiments are typically focused on improving a primary metrics or like couple of secondary metrics. What are some data points that you feel that CRO experts often miss but should have considered while analyzing the test results?
Yeah, so I think it's helpful to think of metrics that you're measuring in a test as categorized as quantity or quality based. So a lot of times, your primary metric in a test is a quantity based metric. It's click through rate, add to carts, interactions with a function or a feature. That's a thing that you have changed and that you want to measure whether people are using that thing more. When we're thinking about sort of the overall experience effect that your tests are having on a user on the website, it's really helpful, and I think really, really valuable, to think of the comparable and measure the comparable quality metric for that quantity. So not just interactions with the search function, for example, but interactions with the search function being your quantity, and your quality metric of a general touch point of have we improved the experience of the user would be the subsequent metrics. So your progression to PDPs, your engagement post search. So I think looking at them together, a true successful test would have both a success in its quantity and its quality.
Yeah. And I think that that binds very well so that it even will be able to take the success forward. Like, let's say primary metric is something that shows super green, but then secondary supporting metrics are not that green. Then again, it makes a little bit question or confusion. Like, should we even
Oh
make
yeah,
it a winner?
Oh yeah, you get yourself down plenty of rabbit holes like this, but I think it all feeds into that that understanding of how your customer has behaved. So even if you don't see a straight green of yes, this is an outright winner, we will implement this onto the website, the learnings involved in that analysis are equally as valuable in how they can then be applied after that test. The metrics of a test don't stop when you hand the report into your stakeholders. You should be using that to inform what you do next.
Yes, and it gives a depth as well in from like data lens that what has happened, like rather than just like relying on one metric and not just considering what other things could have been
Yeah, for
taken
sure.
into consideration and then thinking of them later. So it makes really important to understand like what set of like metrics should we even consider. Like you had given a good example of search. So what are some common A/B testing mistakes that should be avoided, otherwise it would lead to invalid results?
So I have a couple of it. They kind of all boil down to a general theme of running experiments that ultimately don't have enough statistical power um, to determine our result. So you really fall into danger of having a false positive or a false negative when you're interpreting the results. A key component of all testing is obviously sample size. You have to have a sample size that is large enough to be able to detect the differences outside of chance. And obviously, we all know about statistical significance. That's a really key component of that. But you also need to have a sample size which is large enough and a data set large enough to give an accurate representation of your audience. So running a test that continues throughout the weekend, the types of customers you have on a Monday to Friday might be different than your weekend customers. So giving tests long enough to run increases your statistical power, increases your sample size, and gives a much more reliable indication that the sampled users who have gone through your experiences are representative of your general customer base.
Yes, and the one thing that you mentioned is statistical power. So, do you consider any benchmark that below this should be avoided, or anything above 80, let's say for an example, is considered okay or should be even taken forward, but anything not performing like under that number or over that number should be discarded? So, is there a benchmark like you follow, or do you just rely on the like machine's decision?
Um, a bit of both. We take it case by case. So our gold standard, of course, is at 95%. That hero 95% statistical significance is our absolutely yes. Let's proceed, sort of without question on that. Um, not every test is significant, and in fact, most tests fall into that realm of falling just shy. But you could argue the case that it's really positive, but it hasn't got that 95%. We're pretty stringent on the 95%, but anything less than that by no means it's a failure. Like I mentioned before, we take those results and spin them up again, sort of figure out what went wrong, how we can sort of enhance that in the future. Or we just consider the fact that not every change makes a material difference in that way. So in those cases, like your example of the 80%, we'd look at the trend. So we'd really start to see like, okay, it didn't significantly increase it from a 95% statistical significance perspective, but it's been pretty clear the whole way through that we have this trend occurring. We can be comfortable that this is a fairly low risk change to make. We can move in that direction should the business want to.
Yep. And I think wider the gap between both the graphs of control and variant, like higher the confidence even we'll have,
Mm-hmm.
like because the graph lines would show that hey, like variant is at top and like control is a little bit far, then it makes us more happy. And if there are less overlaps, it would be like, yeah, that's performing better. If it doesn't even reach the 95 benchmark, then at least we know that okay, we were on right track, but somehow like we couldn't go there or maybe we couldn't reach, but then the hypothesis was towards the better line that we thought through.
Yes. Yeah, it's all in the name of sort of proving or disproving your own hypothesis.
Yes,
And that doesn't always have to be we make a change on the website.
correct.
It can just be a continuous hypothesis learning.
And I think we also need to have an appetite of like understanding that tests can lose and it can win. So it's like two sides of coin, both has like
Yeah.
its own things.
Yeah, for sure.
So Emma, tell us, like, whenever you present research findings or a test proposal to a stakeholder, how can it be done more effectively to ensure that we get stakeholders buy-in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the buy-in part is crucial if you're going to be progressing the program and really moving forward to achieve sort of the test and research outcomes that you want to. One of the things that I've really learned and observed at Super Retail Group in particular in an in-house CRO position is that CRO really becomes a weapon when it is used alongside shared business goals and strategies. So when it's used in tangent with projects and initiatives from stakeholders, you kind of address the buy-in at the start. So you're going at it with a shared context. It's really important as part of that your stakeholders at the start, before you go in and start to propose you'd like to do this or this research or this test, understanding the power that CRO can bring and the value that research and test can bring to both reducing risk to any of those planned initiatives, to giving more insight, to really understanding sort of revenue values and whether it will sort of work if you progress it through. When it comes to actually proposing, like, I would like to do this test or I'd like to do this research as part of this project, the simpler, the better. I think telling a story is a really effective way to do it. So it's great to have all of your data behind you and to be really, really research driven in how you're explaining things, but keep it key to the effects and the impacts that it has. You tend to lose people a lot if you're heavily in the numbers, but bringing it back to tangible impacts that people can relate to, it makes it really powerful, and treating it like a story. So this is happening, we will do this, and it will help in X and Y, is a really, really clear way to sort of to explain yourself and continue that buy-in from stakeholders to encourage the progression.
It's like data is our soldier into the field of like
Yes.
presenting the ideas, and like just understanding that how like the customer would react to is also important, because if it's a no, then it also makes important for us to understand that why it's a no, like what's the reason or the thought process behind that. Is it
Mhm.
because of the brand guidelines, or is it because of some past learnings that has just restricted them, or it's also even restricting us to proceed further?
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us, how do you conduct a competitive analysis to identify opportunities for optimization?
Competitor analysis is a really key component of our and any research process, really, when it comes to test ideas and just opportunities to enhance. We could take a look at the competitor landscape and the competitor journey across all the major touch points of the analysis that we're looking at. So, for example, if we're looking at search, for example, we'd look at all the search-based touch points across the site. One of the key components that I think is really crucial when doing a competitor analysis, especially, is that it can fall into the realm of being a little bit subjective. So, you look at a website and you might think something different than me, but implementing some sort of standardized scale and bringing those qualitative observational insights into a rank-based formula and sort of attributing scores to each of them helps add a layer of quantitative data to something which is sort of pretty subjective. And then the real power in the idea to bring competitor insights to understand sort of where to go to next is in that layering alongside your own knowledge of your customers. It's really important to remember that you might not have, or in fact, you don't have the business context of that other retailer to explain sort of why they've made certain decisions, but you do have the context of your own business. So whilst you might see something great, a really cool function, you don't know why they've done that. You don't know how it's performing necessarily. But you can understand, does that provide a design pattern that addresses a specific problem that we have? So it's the combination of understanding what's happening in the market from a good and a bad perspective, so where there are wins and losses, but also applying that to, we know this about our customers and our website.
So it's also like a blend of our past experiences, and we know that how users these days are adaptive to certain elements. Like we suggest them that this should be there, though we have not tried, we do not know their data, but then we have that confidence basis, the past experimentation and the learning trends that we learn from like market research as well.
Yeah.
How do you apply layering? Like the one thing that you mentioned, which I've not heard in like competitive analysis. So how do you apply like layers to it, or how do you blend that out?
Do you mean sort of incorporating it
Yes.
with our understanding? So if you think of, you might conduct your own internal research on your own website and say, I've used search in this example previously. So you understand your own search experience, your wins and your losses in your own experience. You can map out a funnel, understanding where people are engaging, sort of whether they're using predictive searches, what their search terms are, and so on. So you know a lot about how people use your search, and you have an idea just based off understanding your own data where you might find opportunities, or you might have issues that sort of feed themselves into testing or future enhancement. If you then compare that to a competitive analysis and you see a competitor sort of using predictive search in a way that you've already highlighted might be a gap on your own site, then those two together sort of can form we have sort of a tangible idea of options about what you may do.
So I think that's a wonderful way you just informed that how should we even convince when we are doing a competitive analysis. Like we have our own problems, then we try to identify if there's something better being done, and then we bring that, hey, that is the reason we are saying that it should be a competitive way. I think that's a
Yeah.
wonderful way you just explain that how it should be done, or how should we even take forward with our confidence that why competitive analysis is required.
And it's not, I think specifically, the great thing about competitive analysis in CRO space and with testing is that it's something to be tested. You might see a really amazing design. That's perfect. That fits our problem. Excellent. We're going to use that as a potential variation, inspiration of something in the future. And it might perform terribly. But at least then you've learned and you've mitigated that risk of just implementing something that they're doing it, so we will do it,
Yes.
is sort of why you need a testing layer as part of that whole process.
Yes, I think that's true that it might even be terrible, but yes, then we need to understand that it was because of how our problems are different, or maybe they are different, but then our audience is also perhaps different.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, given your background in psychology, how has it helped you become better at CRO?
Massively. I think I mentioned at the start that I didn't even know this was a job, but it feels like a perfect fit now that I'm in it. Practically, like the most sort of practical day-to-day answer to this question is in research methods and experimentation methods. My whole degree was sort of understanding different research methodologies and conducting certain types of analysis, all to create a hypothesis and run experiments. And the sort of the protocol and the process of that experimentation, and then the analysis off the back end. My whole day-to-day is conducting research and running experiments. So the two are very interlinked, and the skills I learned throughout psychology were absolutely transferable in that sort of practical application. There's also a level of I did psychology and I ended up in this world and sort of into the CRO space because I'm interested in people. I like and care about how people make decisions and interact with an interface, and how you can sort of make that experience better. And if the experience is better, then sort of they ultimately progress further into the journey that you want them to take, and how people sort of emotionally interact with brands really interests me. So that interest and passion got me into this space, and it's sort of what keeps me engaged. And sort of, it's not a chore at all for me to like constantly be learning and sort of reading and listening to things around this space that I'm just interested in it.
So I think it's just that brings more energy to your current practice. I think your background just adds to it, and it's interesting
Yeah,
to learn
for sure.
as well that how it's interlinked and how you are able to interlink, because not many of them would just feel that hey, this background just helped me. So yours is like a total positive reflection of like how it can help or how previous experiences can also be part of this practice, and maybe it can just prove to be more stronger.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think the great thing about the digital space in general is that there are such varied backgrounds in the people who work in these positions. And I think that that variety and sort of range of thought and how people sort of approach things and how people are interested in things only makes everything better.
Yep. So tell us, what major hurdles do you think retailers will encounter in near future, and how can conversion rate optimization help them?
I think that a big one is that customers are becoming more and more brand agnostic in the way that they shop. That a level of brand loyalty that we've seen historically is sort of like moving away a little bit, and that's not how customers are primarily sort of using it as their only driver anymore. The market is becoming much more competitive, especially in the digital space. So CRO really can become very powerful to a business in terms of regularly testing and validating your own assumptions about your customers, using it to understand why people shop with you, exactly sort of the experiences that people are looking for and the experiences that might hinder someone from continuing to progress, using sort of the CRO based insights that come from testing and research to lean in to why customers are shopping with you. And it's that understanding and using that to enhance your own experience that's ultimately going to make a difference in a competitive market.
And any piece of advice you would want to give to the retailers who are new to CRO, or any kind of wisdom that you might want to share?
Just try. Like I think start with what you're curious in and what you want to know about your customers. Find that out, whether that's through Google Analytics, or through conducting a short survey, or looking at product reviews or feedback on your website. Understand what you've got now to answer some of those questions. Start to interrogate that data a little bit, and then see what naturally comes from that. So understand what your hypotheses might be to improve on some of those issues that has been highlighted, and just give it a go. Do a test and learn from there. Like the best way to learn it is by doing it, and it's not testing exclusively. It can be sort of research is equally as powerful in terms of arming people to make the right decisions. So start with what you've got, and just give it a go.
That's a great motivation. That, like you said, trying is important than that of like thinking, building backlogs. Like there should be one day that yes, we are able to try our backlog and at least see how it helped. Or if it didn't work, then there should be like even more motivation to try it further. That why it didn't work.
Yeah, use your test results as an additional piece of data. It's okay. So why didn't it work? What hypothesis can come from something which was inconclusive or negative? It becomes cyclic, and you can use that to move forward.
It just makes our brain exercise more when it doesn't work.
Yes.
It makes,
Yeah, it's a bit like, oh,
and then you think that hey, I could have tried this, that, and then the design rethinking happens from there. I think it starts from there as well, because then you try to make it even more better. Now that you know that does not perform well, the next iteration is one last chance, or maybe one of the last chances that we can still try.
yeah. And sometimes in those situations where you have something that doesn't work, this is where I think CRO can be really powerful, in that it makes you question your own assumptions, and like what you might have been gone into a test with a hypothesis that's like, there's no way it can fail, this is much better, whatever it might be, and it doesn't. Well then, like, you have learned something about your own customers, and the business has taken that risk mitigation seriously, and you haven't proceeded with something which was ultimately incorrect. But I think a lot of the benefit of the exercise, in addition to obviously increasing growth and revenue and all of those big business improvement side of things that come from enhancements on the online space, is you grow that customer understanding and you question your own assumptions.
Yes, and that's the reason we A/B test and we do not directly implement. So I think it also brings us back to an answer that hey, it didn't go work. I mean, it didn't work well. We prevented revenue loss, but that was the reason we A/B tested. Had we known
Yeah,
this, we would have just implemented.
yeah.
Yeah. So tell us, like, how are you using any AI tools in your work, and do you believe AI will help improve the optimization efficiency?
Yeah, absolutely. At the moment, I'm using AI primarily sort of in the data grooming and sort of admin and administration side of things. So sort of Excel formulas and cleaning up spreadsheets and things like that. And I think a lot of the efficiency that can be gained through AI, and I certainly think that there's space for AI within the optimization industry, is in that data and admin space, taking away those menial, repetitive, sort of low impact tasks, sort of the data entries and the spreadsheet groomings and all of that sort of stuff, taking that off a strategist's plate, so that they have more time to dig into the data and to understand their customers, will increase sort of the outcomes of that research and understanding.
And do you foresee like it will help others in future as well, like those who are new or maybe those who are willing to use AI and optimization? Do you encourage in copywriting, or maybe I know that copywriting definitely needs that creative thinking, but yes, those who have not started, maybe they can also try their hands with and just give it a shot, like in future, in order to maybe just save time and like be more creative.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's certain tasks that of course you can. I would encourage anyone sort of fresh into the industry to do it first without AI, though. I think that human level understanding and sort of critical thinking application to what you see, because our customers are people, and people don't necessarily behave as you expect them to, or perfectly rationally. So um, having that lens of being able to see outside of the norm, um, is really crucial. And I think that the creative element is certainly a big part of CROs in terms of formulating and thinking about variation designs, um, understanding your test hypotheses, all of that sort of stuff. And I think that keeping that as a human lens is really important. But I think the AI side of things is great in, I spoke a little bit earlier about attaching quantitative figures to competitor insights, for example. Like that sort of application of categorization can absolutely be taken off someone's plate through AI.
Yes. It will be just like an assistant to us, and when we are
Absolutely.
not
Yeah.
able to think, there would be like some triggers to our mind that okay, you can think in that direction or that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I also think um, you're absolutely right in that kind of framing, that AI essentially becomes like an extension of the team. It becomes sort of an additional administrator in the team, and just like another member of the team. I think there's a level of peer review needed in anything that does come from an AI space. Like, we all check each other's work. Let's also make sure we are checking the AI work as well.
Yeah. Any final thoughts you would want to share before we conclude?
Uh, More so just that, just to encourage people to sort of pay attention to the customer insights that you have. Um, there's an ample amount of information you can get from customers online, whether it's sort of straight quantitative or just from going through and experiencing as a customer would your own website, or doing a bit of a walkthrough. Take the time to do the research and do it at whatever step you're already at, and use those insights to sort of think about what you might do next. And yeah, encourage people to start to test some of those next steps that come out of the data.
Yes, you encourage trying more, so I think that's a great
Yeah,
thing, great piece of motivation for all of us.
I think the headline would be encourage the learning. Like, I really think a lot of it all stems from the depth of understanding you have, and the quality of your research. The knowing is so powerful in terms of what the solutions could be.
So I think learning is like a power. The more we learn, and the more we continue to learn, it becomes a powerhouse of our own data bank that we'll be able to create for not even testing, but yes, for some features and all that. Because if we stop learning, that's where we stop thinking. Then what next to do?
Absolutely.
Then we stop thinking and we look for references that hey, it should be this, that, or just easy thing that's available in the market. But the more we focus on learning, it will be like we'll be able to know that okay, how our results might perform, or it should be curated to our audience segment as well. Yes.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
All right, then we'll move to our favorite rapid fire round, and I would love to hear your like spontaneous responses.
Okay.
All right, if you were starting a career in CRO today, what is one thing that you would do differently?
I don't think I would do much differently. But to think back about my earlier days when I was working, sort of just starting in SEO and sort of the paid ad space, I would probably more rigidly apply a test and learn process. I was doing a bit of it ad hoc, but I'd probably lean into the principles of experimentation earlier than just when I started in CRO.
Got it. I think that's a piece of learning that though you have not done or you might not restart from today, but yes, those who are starting would be definitely able to like understand you and like grab maximum from this. So tell us, whom do you look forward to in CRO space, and do you follow any such personality who has groomed in past and you look forward to following their paths as well?
I'm really enjoying seeing what David Mannheim is doing with his Made with Intent based venture. I think it's awesome, and I think he's got such a good lens and thought process around personalization specifically and that customer understanding.
So hope David is listening us that we are his followers. So tell me any book that you follow and you recommend others as well to like follow.
Um, I've read a few. I read generally books that are sort of adjacent. If I'm reading a business-based book, but a book I read recently, which I really liked, around like human-centered design, was I'm afraid Debbie from marketing is away for the day. Just a really interesting look at sort of practical applications of human-centered design and testing in office spaces and sort of in real life.
Okay. All right. So what's your go-to travel destination in Australia?
In Australia, I went to Western Australia on a road trip for the first time last year, and I would just want to go back. I'm definitely a WA convert.
So you're craving for that space again.
Yes, put me in a car in the desert.
All right. So one thing that you think that AI will replace in next 3 years.
I hope data entry. At least from my perspective of the data entry that I have to do.
All right, then one, if not a CRO specialist, what is the other profession you would have chosen?
Um, it's difficult because I'm not quite sure. I don't think I was ever really sure until I discovered that this was a job. When I left university, the other path I was very close to taking, had I not fallen into the digital space, would have been going down the law route and doing sort of a law conversion.
Okay. And how about psychology? Would you want to go back to that space or would you want to take it forward?
No, so I really liked it when I did it as my degree, but I realized pretty quickly that I didn't want to go clinically with it. So I really lent in, and where I found like a lot of my interest and passion for it was its application in other areas. So this being a prime example, but application in law was one that really got me interested in that space. Its applications in business and economics in general, and obviously the digital space.
Got it. Cool. Tell us one CRO metric that you wish people should stop obsessing over.
Can I say conversion rate? not to do myself out of an acronym, but I think there are so many factors that go into an overall conversion rate, that if you're going to hold up a conversion rate, let's also give equal weight and measure to everything that goes into that. So all the micro steps leading up to that are equally, if not more important, to understanding the experience of your customers than just your end conversion rate.
And do you also want to add revenue? People just
Yeah. Yeah. Get specific is I think where a lot of the value comes from, is exactly what behavior are you interested in, and obviously multiple behaviors fit together to make your conversion rate, but if we can pull the dials on one, what is that behavior and what's the corresponding metric?
all right. Tell us a dream or goal that you want to achieve in next 3 years.
Oh wow. I think professionally, to grow the space at SRG, sort of keep the momentum going, and sort of further embed sort of the experimentation space as a core business function for sure. To see that grow would be awesome. Yeah.
And any personal goals that you feel that, hey, you should be looking at? Like, no, you have mentioned one. I remember that you want to travel back again. So
Travel again for sure. I'd like to travel more. I'm trying to buy a house. That seems to be just a never-ending timeline of a goal. But yeah,
hopefully you achieve that.
traveling house.
Hopefully you achieve both of them, like travel
Yeah,
and growing the space in CRO.
I'll try.
All right. Thanks for an insightful conversation today, Emma. Stay tuned, everybody. Happy optimizing.
See ya.